Having grown up playing and loving the sport of baseball, my father instilled in me a great love and respect for the game. I can appreciate the nuances and certainly a lot of the lessons that are very subtle but you can pull from the game. My father grew up in St. Louis with his twin brother, where my father was actually a pitcher and he was the catcher, so they get to practice with one another. So sorry, I like Kansas City, but I love the Cardinals. Growing up, my father was actually the coach for several of my Little League teams. You can imagine the funny dynamic where your dad is the coach, but at the same time, Corey, I need to be the coach, and I have to watch out over these other kids too. You can't just call me dad all the time. Besides coaching for our teams, though, he would really teach me back home. So as I grew up into high school, I developed and distinguished myself really as a pitcher. I was actually a starting pitcher for my high school baseball team. I didn't throw the fastest or the hardest. I threw okay, but I would tend to mix in some of the fun, curvy stuff to throw off batters, whether it be my changeups, my curveballs, and my signature pitch actually was a slider. But when learning a curveball is different from other pitches. Because a curveball, for one, you hold it differently. You throw it differently. Normal, just throwing a baseball, you throw it like this. Curveball, you actually grab it like a C and you throw it like this. And and you grab that seam right along there. And one of the biggest things about throwing a curveball correctly is the balance of pressure. Too much pressure and it spins down into the ground. Too little pressure and you get what's called a hanging curveball, where it'll just float up there and it comes right through the sweet spot for the batter to crush it. So it's really a balance of pressure to get the curveball just right. Now, bless his heart, at our home, we actually worked together to make a pitcher's mound in our backyard. And we measured it precisely, got a pitcher's plate, a pitcher's rubber on the mound, and a home plate for my dad to catch for me. Now the roles were reversed, where his brother previously was the catcher. He would now get to catch for his son. So you can imagine, as I said, a curveball is a balance of pressure between going into the ground and coming into a fat pitch for the batter to hit. After a few licks, we decided it would be a good gift to give my dad some used catcher's equipment to protect himself a little bit more. And I have some of that gear. Intimidated yet? This is a high school kid learning to throw a curveball for the first time, and my 50-something-year-old father is, again, bless his heart, down there catching my pitches and taking those into the leg, taking those into the bony parts of the ankles. You can imagine the patience that was required of my father. And so the curveball itself is a nice metaphor as I reflect back and prepare for my own fatherhood of our first child coming. And I think about the lessons that I learned from my dad, because much in the way of throwing a curveball is about balancing pressure, is the same with fathering and mentoring. So my dad, especially with the unruly teenager, often had to balance pressure that he applied to me. You know, pressure, come on Corey, let's get out and practice. Come on Corey, let's do your homework. But still, not too much pressure that, you get the rebellious teenager coming out. I know, Dad, I know how to drive. I know what you're saying with the coaching lesson, and it's always that balance. And then also without applying too much pressure, is instilling in me to learn my own drive, not just rely on his pressure and his drive to make me practice and get better, but hopefully that I would develop the drive to want to get better myself. So, much in the same way with So yeah, I look forward. I know I have a few years off before I have to worry about the challenges of balancing pressure with a teenager specifically, but largely that goes hand in hand with pressure, or I'm sorry, with patience and just raising a little one from the beginning. So as I prepare for fatherhood, I enjoy reflecting back on all of the lessons, both direct and subtle, that I got from my father, and not only learning to throw a curveball, but learning to curve in life. So, thank you.